All right. It is 2:58. We got folks logging in. We're going to give everybody a few more minutes. We have too many participants to do introductions. I like doing them, but once we get about to 15 or 20, we don't have enough time. So we'll just keep adding people here. Couple of little subjects. You guys should have received an email this week from HUD in regards to how the Benevolent Fund is going to be run. If you didn't see it, if you don't have it, you can reach out to Julie or to Kate and verify the email address. You should have received it. And it's basically the update on how the Benevolent Fund is going to work as of actually April 1st going forward. So I do want to make sure everybody knows about how that's working. So if you haven't seen it, make sure you reach out. There we go. We've got up in the email address or in the chat, you can see Kate's email address, and she can give you make sure you got the Benevolent Fund email. All righty, we're going to give folks a few more minutes because we have a lot of people signed on that are still probably fighting with tech, because you know how that goes. All righty. Okay, boy, I see a lot of names that I haven't seen on the peer group before. This is great. Julie, while we're waiting to get everybody together, can you bring on the Facebook view for just a second? I want to remind everybody, if you haven't already joined the peer Facebook group, even if you're not a big Facebook fan, we've got a couple of guardians that joined Facebook just for this peer group, and you don't have to do anything else on Facebook. We'd like to have you there because it allows for communication between each other at 2 o'clock in the morning. So there is a vetting process because the Facebook group is specifically for guardians, professional, public, and their staff. It's not for networking with facilities or funeral homes or any of that. Here's this big update right here. You see right here, this red new update. This is about the email you should have received. This is about the Benevolent Fund and how it's going to be, the regulations that are going to, or requirements that it's going to have going forward. So keep your eye out for that. Read it. This is especially important if you take cases from hospitals or SNFs. Make sure you read that in depth before you take those cases, because it may be a case that the Benevolent Fund will not pay guardian fees or attorney fees because it comes from a hospital or a SNF. So it's important that you read that and know it. Feel free to call, ask questions, send an email, all the above. All right, so that's Facebook. All right, so let's see here. So we're going to give maybe 2 more minutes for folks to log on with whatever kind of troubles they're having. It's 3:01. We'll just wait a minute or two. Wow, I see a lot of people that I've never seen on here before. This is really good. Glad you guys are here. This is good. All right. All right. Kate, did you solve your tech problems or no? No? It's not just me.
I
then.
just
there you
heard
go.
her holler
Sometimes
from the other room. No, unfortunately, Kate is having tech issues today. She's been rebooted.
Okay.
So just so you
Okay.
guys know, it happens to all of us. So yeah, today
All of us.
it's Kate's turn for the tech issues.
I just feel like it happens to me more often than anybody else. Okay.
Teresa,
So,
I'm not seeing anybody new joining us, so we're okay.
Okay, so I'm going to be introducing James as our presenter in just a few minutes. The way we're going to run this is James says he's comfortable asking questions during the presentation or at the end. So if you'd like to and don't want to speak, you can put it in chat. We'll try to keep an eye on chat. If you want to actually ask a question, you can put your hand up on the camera, or you can do that little yellow hand thing that you're trying to wave to ask a question. We'll try to, it says down at the bottom along the line where chat is, it'll say raise your hand. You can click on that and we'll see a little yellow hand to answer your question. So James is kind enough to put up with either way. So all right, I think, Julie, can you tell if other people are still trying to get in, or can you not really tell?
I can tell. It puts them in the waiting room. Nobody else has been trying to get in. We have about 39 participants right now.
Okay, all right, well then we will get started. We don't want to use up more time. All righty, so Mr. James, I ended up meeting Mr. James indirectly through a piece of real estate in Gainesville situation, and then found out about this and was thrilled to death to have him come and present to us. So James, I am going to let you do however much of an introduction on you want to do. Whatever I think. There we go. About yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then get started on your presentation for us.
All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is James Vallis. I'm the supervisor for the Gainesville HUD-VASH program. which covers the entire city of Gainesville. We also cover Ocala and the villages. I'm a veteran. I was in the military for 30 years. I retired in 2005 as a sergeant major, which is the highest enlisted rank. After I retired, I went back to school and got my bachelor's in psychology and my master's in social work, and been doing it ever since. I graduated with my master's in 2009. So I'm a veteran serving veterans. Tell you a little bit about our
Nice.
program. It's called the HUD-VASH program, as you can see on the screen. And I'm going to just give you a basic overview of what we do, who we are, and how we service the veterans. And if at any time you have any questions, feel free to jump in and ask me. So HUD-VASH, the HUD portion, of course, stands for Housing and Urban Development, and then the VASH portion is Veterans Administration Supportive Housing. So we work in conjunction with HUD, and the way we do that, and we'll get a little bit more deeper, but if you see, it starts out, oh, I went too fast. It starts out with Department of the Veterans Administration in Washington, working with the HUD in Washington. So the two heads of both departments work closer together to establish rules and guidelines that come all the way down to us. Then it goes down to VAMC, stands for the Veterans Administration Medical Center, and the PHA is the Public Housing Authority. So we work in close contact with the Public Housing Authority. Now here we have two housing authorities. We have the Gainesville Housing Authority and the Alachua County Housing Authority. Most of our vouchers come from Alachua Housing Authority, Alachua County Housing Authority. Mostly because Alachua is better staffed and we get a lot quicker service dealing with Alachua County than we do with Gainesville Housing Authority. And then of course the individual social workers and the individual veterans.
James, is this program throughout the whole country or the whole state, or where all does this go?
It's nationwide to include Puerto Rico, Alaska, and Hawaii. So all 50 states and our territories.
Okay.
So what we try to do is, it's also known as cheap rent. And so we have a lot of veterans who are homeless, who have very low income. A lot of them they're not retirees. They don't have a lot of income. They didn't serve a lot of time. A lot of our veterans serve very minimal time. Some of them not qualify for any other service except HUD-VASH because they didn't serve the minimum time of 6 months. So as an exception, they'll qualify for our program, but won't qualify for any other medical service or any other benefits. This was done as an exception through Congress when they found that there were a lot of homeless veterans who did not serve a lot of time, but were still considered veterans. As you can see, we have over 97,000 vouchers awarded, and that's nationwide. That's throughout the nation. And we have over 350 public housing authorities that we work with. And so the vouchers are almost like Section 8 vouchers, except not as difficult to obtain. So if you know anything about Section 8 vouchers, a lot of times those you have to be on a list for quite some time. You have to sometimes up to 5 years. With us, it's automatic, it's instant. So a veteran comes in, from the time we see him to the time we get him a voucher, probably about 2 to 3 weeks maximum. So our VA case managers, which is the social workers, they're the ones that determine eligibility for the program. Now, most of the eligibility is minimal. The only thing that excludes a veteran from getting a voucher would be if they're a registered sex offender. But other than that, even if they have a criminal record, even if they got a dishonorable discharge or under honorable conditions discharge, they would still qualify for our program. Now, there are certain disqualifications, like if they got a court martial, a general court martial, then they would not be eligible. But if they got a regular court martial, then they would still be eligible.
Wow, that's unusual.
I know, and it's one of the only programs that you can have other than an honorable discharge and still qualify for.
Oh.
So if you see there, it says eligible for VA. VA healthcare, but that's not necessarily true under the exception. And I think we're going to get a little bit into exception. Uh, there's a HEARTH Act, which talks about what considers or what's considered to be homeless. So if a person's couch surfing or living with friends, that's not considered homeless. They must be homeless on the street. Now, if they're in danger of losing their housing and they can prove that they're about to be evicted, then we can still accept them into our program. And they
Is the
also,
HEARTH Act a VA act?
it's a congressional act. It's a,
Okay.
so, and we also have to identify a need for intensive case management. There are other programs that they may qualify if they do not need intensive case management. And we'll talk about a little bit later on of what's considered intensive case management. But if they do not need case management, in other words, if they don't have severe mental health issues or substance use disorder issues, then we can refer them to what's called SSVF. It's Supportive Service for Veterans and Families. So SSVF can help them find an apartment and pay their rent for up to 2 years. And there's another program called Shallow Subsidy where they could pay half their rent for up to 4 years. So if they don't require intensive case management, a lot of times we'll refer them to SSVF. Most of the people we get require intensive case management.
So we do have a quick question.
Sure.
Teresa Brock wants to know, she is a homeless veteran who's been living in his truck for years. She's had him in Hernando County, on the Hernando County HUD list for years. She needs assistance with housing for him. Would he qualify for this program? And I apologize, there's somebody mowing the lawn right next to my window.
He should qualify, but we would have to do a detailed examination of his service, whether or not he's considered a registered sex offender, and there's other issues that we would have to determine. But his best bet would be to reach out to one of our outreach social workers, and normally they stay at Grace Marketplace. We have a vet dorm there where if he's a veteran, he can get admitted to the vet dorm, and he can stay in the homeless shelter, and the outreach social worker will process his request for HUD-VASH. So again, the priority focus is on the chronically homeless, people that have been homeless for a long period of time, such as your veteran, and then they have a high acuity or medical vulnerable. So the high acuity could be for mental health issues. We have most of our veterans are going to suffer from either severe substance use disorder or severe mental health issues. And again, that's not unusual for the homeless population. I think that's generally across the board for the homeless population, that there's generally a good percentage of the population that does suffer from mental health issues or substance use issues. In our program, there's a high percentage of them that do. So again, our eligibility is not predicated on the following: the length of sobriety. They don't even have to be sober. Once we get them into the program, we will recommend that they do some sort of substance use disorder treatment. They're not obligated to do so. We still rely on self determination. So if they determine they don't need it, we don't force it on them. It's not predicated on treatment compliance, prior treatment in other homeless programs, and income verification by the VA. Now, we do verify income, and the Housing Authority does verify the income. They're required when they go to the Housing Authority for their orientation to provide 3 months of bank statements that indicate where their income is coming from. And they do a criminal background check at the Housing Authority. We do not do that, but the Housing Authority will do a criminal background check. So the principle that we have in the HUD-VASH program is housing first. We understand that when the veteran, whether they have substance use disorder issues or mental health issues, that those issues cannot be addressed until we get them adequately housed. So housing first is the motto or the principle by what we operate on. So our goal is to get them into an apartment as quick as possible. From the moment we get them, we generally have 90 days from the moment we get them to get them into an apartment. Now, for some of our veterans, it could take a little longer if they have a criminal background or if they've been evicted before. And a lot of the apartment complex, when they do a background check, will not accept them. So we'll have to search around for an apartment complex that's willing to accept them. And as you can see, we already sort of talked about some of this, that it doesn't matter whether they take treatment or not. We don't force them into treatment. So for our case managers, their goal is to establish a therapeutic relationship based on mutual respect. When we do the orientation, we emphasize that this relationship is based on mutual respect. You treat your social worker with dignity and respect, they'll treat you with dignity and respect, and you'll get along fine in the program. We do have some veterans that have issues, whether it's mental health issues, personality issues, that do have difficulty maintaining relationships. So those we sort of give a little extra emphasis to, and that's when I get involved as a supervisor. I will go out and talk to a veteran and let them know that, hey, there's certain behaviors that are unacceptable. We need you to be in compliance. So while they're in our program, they will sign an agreement with us, with the VASH program. They'll sign an agreement with the HUD program, and of course, they'll sign a lease agreement once they get an apartment. So when I do the orientation, I emphasize that they need to follow all three agreements to be successful in this program.
James, we've got another question in
Sure.
chat. Barbara Stone asks, how do you find these veterans if they are homeless on the streets?
So we have what's called outreach social workers who generally work out of the homeless shelter at Grace Marketplace, but they also do drive around the streets talking to homeless people and asking them if they are veterans. We also do a point in time count. Excuse me. I'll be right back. I got a water in here. So we do a point in time count, and we actually reach out and touch veterans out on the street. We talk to all the homeless people, whether they're veterans or not, but we find out if they are veterans, then we take their information and reach out to them and try to set them up with one of our shelters. So we have several shelters. We have Grace Marketplace, which is the biggest shelter. And within Grace, there's a vet dorm. So we have separate arrangements for the veterans at Grace Marketplace, but we also have several other places. We have VOA, Volunteers of America has a location. And we also had Vet Space, which was closed, but is about to reopen again. And that's on 39th Avenue. And you've probably seen it if you've been by there. It's got the little heart on there that says VA.
We got more questions coming in, James.
Sure.
So, okay, so now we have one from Keith who says, I was just told at the West Palm Beach VA Medical Center has a long wait. Do you know what the wait time is down here? I think he's talking about down in West Palm. So is there a connection between the medical center appointments and your program?
The wait for what? I'm not sure what he's talking about.
I'm assuming that Keith, you want to come off a chat and ask your question a little better so I'm not doing a good job? Keith, you want to come off a mute and ask the question? There we go. Now go ahead.
HUD-VASH program.
Oh, we're not hearing you, Keith.
So let me address the wait.
Can you guys hear him? I can't.
No, I couldn't hear him. There is no wait period for us. So I'm not sure what they're referring to in Palm Beach, unless they ran out of vouchers and they're looking. Now we here in Gainesville don't use all of our vouchers. So we have over 150 remaining vouchers for Alachua County and close to 150 for Gainesville. We'll never use all those vouchers. Now the Housing Authority likes to use them all, but we don't have the population to use all those vouchers. So there is no wait list for us.
In Gainesville.
Yes.
Gainesville. Okay, another question. Barbara Stone says, if the veteran has mental health or cognitive decline and they do not understand what they are signing, do you question if they have capacity?
Yes, and those veterans will probably not be accepted into our program. They will probably be referred to a higher level of care, to an assisted living facility or a nursing home. So one of the requirements in the program is to be able to be independent living. So they have to be able to cook for themselves. They have to be able to pay their bills. They have to be able to shop for themselves. So we stick them in an apartment. They have a case manager, but they still are required to perform independent functions and then ADLs.
So then to kind of expound on Barbara's question, then we can kind of presume that if a veteran is adjudicated incapacitated and one of us has been appointed as their guardian, they probably can't be in this program?
That's correct, unless they have a caregiver that lives with them that's willing to take care of them. So we have several veterans
Okay.
that have a full-time caregiver, and they're the veteran, but they're not able to care for themselves. We are able to accept them as long as they have a caregiver. But if they're alone and they're not capable of independent living, then we will not accept them. We will try to get them into an assisted living facility or a nursing home.
Okay, Keith replied again, and he said specifically HUD-VASH. So I guess what Keith's question is, apparently West Palm is saying that there's a long wait list for their HUD-VASH. James, do you have at the end of this, do you give us a list of all of the offices around the state of how us to get a hold of, or where do we connect?
I do not. That would be a pretty extensive list. I could send you the
Okay, so
spreadsheet
would
that
we
has
just,
everybody
if we
on
were
it.
inquiring, yeah, if we're inquiring about a specific county or city, who do we reach out to about their VASH program?
Well, normally they could reach out to the housing authority, or they could reach out to their local Veterans Medical Administration Medical Center, and they can direct them to who the social worker or the supervisor is for that local HUD-VASH program. So the HUD-VASH program is in every city. So somebody is responsible for every city in America. So normally it's done through, as we said at the beginning, through the VA Medical Center.
Okay.
So if he reaches out to his VA Medical Center, he should be able to find out who the HUD-VASH coordinator is.
HUD-VASH coordinator, that's the name. Okay, there we go.
So the housing recovery plan, once accepted, we develop a treatment plan for him with the case manager and the veteran. As you can see, we establish housing stability, rent paid, meeting employment and income needs. If they do seek employment, some of our veterans do work, but a lot of them are older and they do not work. They live a fixed income, either Social Security or some other retirement, some disability, service-connected disability through the Veterans Administration. And at any time, if you need me to slow down on my slides, because I don't like to read everything on a slide, I think that's pretty much self-explanatory. This is again what our case managers do. We call them housed social workers. They don't like to use case managers anymore, but we have two types of social workers. We have the social workers that work with the veteran who are unhoused, and their primary function is to house them. Once they get them housed, they are transferred to a house social worker, and all of them are licensed clinical social workers. So our house social workers will then take their case and case manage them until their entire stay within the program. So depending upon what phase you're in, and I don't know if we talk about phases, but we start out in what's called intensive unhoused phase. So that's phase one, and the social worker is required to make contact with that veteran at least once a week. After they get stabilized, they start moving up into the program. The second phase will be stabilization, which is once every 2 weeks, then maintenance, which is once a month, and then pre-graduation, which is once a quarter. And then once they graduate, we only see them once a year to help them recertify with their housing authority. So some veterans get to phase 5, fairly quickly, and some never actually reach phase 5 because they'll require intensive case management the entire time in the program.
That's a lot of support. I didn't know that existed.
We do, and each veteran is assigned a social worker, and the social worker is available to assist them in whatever way they can. A lot of times we wind up taking them to doctor's appointments, taking them to Walmart for grocery shopping. We try to emphasize independence, but when COVID hit, we had a lot of veterans relying on our social workers to do a lot of things for them. And so a lot of our veterans got spoiled, and now it's become an expectation where our veterans have become dependent on their social workers to drive them here and there. So when I do orientation, I try to emphasize that, remember, they are not your personal valets. They're not there to take you to everywhere you want to go. And as we do our case management, we do regular assessments, again, to either to move them up or to maintain them in that same phase. Treatment needs may change, the veteran's goals may change. As the veteran becomes more independent, again, we're going to move them up into the phases. We're going to require less visits. We're going to require less contact. One of the issues that we're having now is the aging population of our veterans, where a lot of them are starting to reach the point where they can no longer take care. Now, we do have 2 nurses on staff and a nurse practitioner. So our nurses go out and assist with their medication. They will go over their medication. They will go over a pill box. We also have an occupational therapist who goes out to the home and assesses what needs they have, such as if they need handrails in the bathroom, handrails on the shower, and things of that nature. So we provide all around services to that veteran.
Wow. Wow.
So we've had this happen where a veteran has refused to participate in case management. It's part of the program, and we explain that when they get into the program. But some of our veterans have severe issues, and they're antisocial and do not want to be bothered by anybody. And so a social worker will show up and they'll say, "Get out! I don't want to talk to you," and they'll slam the door. And that's when I go out and say, "Hey, sorry, it's part of the process. It's part of our program. We're required to meet with you. If you don't agree to case management, we'll have to discharge you from our program." Now, what happens when they get discharged from our program, and I explain this to them very thoroughly, the housing authority will terminate your voucher, which means you will be responsible to pay the entirety of your rent. So if you want the housing authority to continue to pay their portion of the rent that they're paying, then you need to participate in case management. That usually slows them down a little bit.
So does that mean that HUD pays a portion and then you guys pay a portion?
No, the veteran has to pay a portion, depending upon what type of income they have. So, for example, let's say the HUD issues them, or the housing authority issues them an $800 voucher. That means they have to find an apartment that is within that $800. Now, the housing authority, depending upon how much income they have, may pay up to 90%. Now, if they have no income, the housing authority will pay 100%. But if they have some income, they may pay up to from 50 to 90%. So let's say the housing authority says, "We'll pay 400. Then that veteran is required to pay 400 to the landlord directly, and the HUD will send a check for their portion directly to the landlord. We run into problems when the veteran decides they don't want to pay their portion.
So VAS itself doesn't pay the rent. They do all the other services, but doesn't pay anything towards the rent.
That's correct. That's strictly HUD and the veteran. We just provide the supportive services. These are some of the reasons why a person may get terminated from our program, and it's something that we go over with the veteran when they sign up for the program. We have, again, our veterans, a lot of time, this population can be a difficult population. They bring unauthorized guests into their apartment. They bring unauthorized illegal substances into the apartment, things of that nature. Sometimes they destroy the property. In that case, they can be evicted, and if they are evicted, they'd be terminated from our program. Now, that doesn't mean they can't come back. We're very liberal on letting them come back into the program, but we do try to emphasize that if they come back in the program, they have to meet the requirements of the program. There have been veterans, I know one veteran go ahead.
So if they do destroy the apartment, let's say, or the house or whatever, does HUD or VAS reimburse the landlord at any level?
Unfortunately not. There was a time where we had additional funds where we were able to pay for repairs, but Congress took that money away from us, so we don't have the funds to be able to pay for repairs, and HUD doesn't pay. So a lot of times,
So because of that, are you finding that you don't have enough houses, or you don't have enough veterans to use up all your vouchers?
we don't have enough veterans to use the vouchers. But we do
Wow,
have
so weird.
we do have a limited availability of apartments that we can use, because a lot of the apartments, once they have a veteran that's either destroyed property or was a difficult tenant, they will not rent a HUD-VASH again. So we do
Yeah.
emphasize that to the veterans as well, that when you destroy property or you don't do your portion of the rent, and you create an eviction, that makes it more difficult for veterans who are following you, because that may sour that landlord on renting to veterans. So we have quite a few landlords that work with us, and we try to do everything we can to keep the veteran stable so they can pay their rent. But we do have some of our veterans that do wind up getting evicted.
So we do have one other question, which is when a veteran doesn't handle his funds and he has a VA fiduciary appointed, will they still qualify for this program?
Absolutely. We quite a few of our veterans have fiduciaries. As a matter of fact, for some, we highly recommend it, especially if they got behind in their rent. We recommend that they obtain a fiduciary so that way they don't get evicted. And in some cases, we'll kind of, we won't insist, but we will highly recommend that if they're going to be successful in their program, they're going to require a fiduciary so we can further assist them.
Okay.
This is just a little bit of background or history.
This has been around a really long time. Wow.
Yeah, HUD-VASH has been around quite a long time. So back in the past, they were required to have severe psychiatric or substance use disorders in order to be eligible, but now it's not a requirement. Of course, a lot of them still do, but it's not no longer a requirement.
Well, that last number seems crazy. 1,000 in '08? That seems like it should be way more than that.
I think it was just the initial phase of the program. So when we started
Oh,
out,
okay.
and I wasn't here when they started out, but there was just, it was kind of like a pilot program. And I think what happened was there was a 60-minute special on veterans who were, on the street, and there was a big uproar on, veterans who served and now can't, shouldn't be on the street. So Congress decided to act and created the HUD-VASH program. And as I said at the beginning, there are a lot of veterans who served a minimum amount of time, but will still qualify for HUD-VASH, even if they don't qualify for any other services. And at the time in 2008, when the program initially started, there was only 75 million to HUD. So that was able to assist about 10,000 homeless veterans throughout the country. So, which is nothing throughout the entire United States. And again, we refer them to the, as a matter of fact, today, Thursday, is our day that we did our orientation. Once we do our portion of the orientation, we drive them directly to the housing authority. We feed them lunch, and then we drive them to the housing authority, and the housing authority will issue them a voucher on that day. Once that voucher is issued, that's when the housing search starts.
That they have, sorry, the fact that they have really supportive case management. I mean, the problem is these veterans who are homeless don't have an ID, they don't have a cell phone, they don't have all the bottom line stuff that they need to be able to do much. So the fact that you guys take them directly over there is great.
Now, generally, when they get referred to us, they'll be referred by an outreach social worker. Before the outreach social worker refers them to us, they're required to make sure they obtain all their documentation. So if they don't have a DD Form 214, which is their character of discharge, they will send a waiver for it. They will assist them in getting an ID card. and things of that nature, including 3 months of their bank statements. Once they have all their documents, then they refer them to us. And that way the process moves a lot smoother. So the Public Housing Authority, they just screen for eligibility for lifetime registration through sort of like Section 8. If they're a state sex offender, again, they're not eligible. Now, when we talk about portability, that's if a veteran is here in Gainesville and decides they want to move to Orlando, then we can do what's called port that voucher to Orlando, and the Orlando Housing Authority will pick up that voucher. And the veteran can find housing within Orlando or wherever it is they want to port to.
So we've got a question from Maria. Do
Sure.
veterans get any priority with HUD because Hernando County has a long waiting list? Also, is it realistic to find rentals for $800?
Well, and that was just an example. I mean, now I think it's all the way up to 1,000, to be honest with you. There are apartment complexes, and I'm going to be frank as I can. Some of them are not in the best neighborhoods. So, and some of them are not the highest quality apartments, but we can only go by what the housing authority authorizes. So if they authorize 920 or 1,020, then we have to look for an apartment within that price range.
So I have a question too. Does
Sure.
the program assist with finding an apartment, and do they pay for utilities?
We do assist in finding them an apartment. We have what's called peer specialists who are veterans themselves, and they will escort the veteran, drive them around looking for apartments, help them with the applications, and things of that nature. And what was the second part of the question?
Do they pay for utilities?
We can get funding for utilities through different services. So SSVF, Supportive Services for Veterans and Families, can assist with deposits for utilities. So we have a lot of different organizations that we work with, Honor Bound, SSVF, United Way, different organizations that we can obtain funds to either assist with deposits, 1 month's rent, or utility deposit. Now, we do have some veterans who have zero income. Now, the PHA cannot deny somebody as a result of zero income. However, it does complicate because they can only give them so much for utilities. So we don't like to accept people in the program who have zero income. We prefer that we find some income, either through Social Security or non-service connected pension through the VA. That way they can at least buy groceries, pay their rent. Otherwise, it makes it very difficult for them to live. We have one place in Gainesville, which is a converted hotel that everything is included. So it's called the Sunshine Inn. If I don't know who's from Gainesville, but the Sunshine Inn over on 13th Street off of 39th Avenue is mostly veterans that are in there. And the utility is covered within the rent. The rent is pretty cheap. It's a small 1-bedroom with a small little kitchenette. And the Sunshine Inn is usually for people with zero income or very low income. And again, as I said in the beginning, it's a sliding scale depending upon how much income they have. And I think we talked about this, a lifetime sex offender registration. And unfortunately, that is not waivable.
Mm.
And when they get the voucher, it gives them those 2 pieces of information, how much a veteran can rent for. And the housing authority is very, very specific. If they give you a voucher for 1020, you can only rent the place that goes up to 1020. You cannot go 1030, 1031, or 1021. You have to find an apartment that is within that voucher range. You cannot pay money out of your pocket for the difference, because the money you're going to pay out of your pocket is for your portion of the rent. Now, normally the vouchers last up to 120 days. Now, we have our own metrics. we're required to get them housed within 90 days. But if we don't get them housed within 120 days, then that voucher will be canceled. And the veteran will either have to get it extended or the veteran will have to get a new voucher. Now, why does that happen? Sometimes the veteran applies for the program and then disappears. We can't find them. We lose contact with them. They don't answer their phone. We'll keep them for up to 120 days and then we'll discharge them from our program. Sometimes they leave the state and don't tell us, or there's other issues going on. They decided they don't want to be in the program.
Do the caseworkers issue them phones? Is that how they get phone service, or?
We do not. They can get phones from the state. Now we do, there was a time, we don't have any anymore. We had some phones and we would issue them a phone, a nice iPhone, but unfortunately the Congress did not renew that. So we don't have any more phones.
So they're typically getting them through Medicaid most of the time?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And this is the housing requirements based on what the VA is, the HUD is looking for. They do come out and do an inspection. So after the veteran selects a unit, they will arrange an appointment for a housing inspector to come out, and a housing inspector will inspect the unit. And if there's anything that's not up to standard, the housing inspector will notify the property manager and let them know that these issues have to be repaired before we're willing to accept this as a HUD-VASH or as a HUD house or apartment. Once they make the repairs, the housing inspector will come back out, approve the unit for leasing, and then the veteran will sign the lease.
So if the veteran has got either minor children or, let's say, a disabled child, are they given a 2-bedroom? Are they allotted more than
Yes.
just for them, or? Okay.
Yes, it depends on the amount of people who are going to be dwelling in that apartment. If they have a significant other, they don't even have to be married to them. If they have a significant other, if they have children, then they will issue the apartment based on the number of people that are going to live in that apartment. And the voucher amount will be based on the amount of people that's going to live in that apartment.
Okay.
These are some of the frequently asked questions that we get. What is the primary goal of HUD-VASH? Of course, our big goal is to end homelessness. That's where we would like to go eventually. We have a yearly goal of how many veterans we want to house in any particular year. Here in Gainesville, our goal is 130 veterans, I think, per quarter. This is a question you probably all have, but I don't have everybody's. But there's a hotline that they can call. And if you want to copy that number down, that's the National Center for Homeless.
Yeah. Julie, will we be sharing this presentation with all the attendees at the end? Is that set to happen today?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right. So if you guys miss it, you'll get an email with the presentation, so you'll have a copy of it.
So when they call that hotline, that'll generate a message to the local outreach homeless coordinator, and that outreach coordinator will try to contact that veteran within 24 hours to try to make contact to find out where they're living and to arrange temporary shelter. Is staying with a family member or friend considered an episode of homelessness? As we talked about earlier, couch surfing, that does not constitute an episode of homelessness. And I'll let you read through that. But generally speaking, we have had people who were on the verge of becoming homeless because they were couch surfing, and whoever they were staying with said they got 10 days to get out. We generally ask the person who they're residing with to write them a letter saying, hey, you got to go. You can't stay here. And so if they're on the verge of being homeless, we can still process them. But generally,
Okay.
they're supposed to be homeless when we get them. And I think we talked a little bit about that. Oh, it didn't give me, yes, they have to have all those documentations. So they need a social security card. They need the DD form 214. If they're married, they'll need the marriage certificate, the social security card. So all documentation, they have to have a state ID or driver's license as well. And I think I sort of answered this question earlier, but so one of the concerns a lot of times that we have when we're accepting people into the program is for the younger veterans. Because there's other programs out there. Once you get into the HUD-VASH program, there's no end date. There's nothing that says you have to leave the program at any specific time. So we've had veterans in our program who were getting their rent paid or a good portion of their rent paid that kind of didn't want to leave the program because they didn't want to lose that housing assistance. So if they're of working age and they can work and they don't have any disability, we do try to refer them to a program that's going to help them get housed, but also help them find employment, so as to not become too dependent on the program and, put them in a situation where once we give you something, we know you don't want to lose it, right? If somebody's paying your rent, you generally don't want to give that up. So we try to start out with a lower level of care is the way I put it when we're doing our screening. I said, well, we might want to start out with this 25-year-old with a lower level of care and refer them to SSVF and employment services so we can get them back, back on their feet. There are cases where we will take some younger people if they have severe mental health issues and are just incapable. In those cases, we do recommend that they do apply for disability, because if they are that disabled where they can work, they should be qualified for some form of disability. Otherwise, they have zero income, and that makes it, again, more complicated.
We also have another
So
question. in the
James, we've got a
chat.
question.
Sure.
Diana wants to know, do the spouses of a deceased veteran who may become homeless qualify for this program?
They do not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if the veteran and the spouse are married and they're living together, and then the veteran dies, then the spouse can continue to live in that apartment. But if she's homeless now and was married to a veteran, then she is not qualified. She may qualify for Section 8, though.
Right.
All right, I think I did right about on time. So now we can open up for more questions.
And if you guys want to
So
come
guys,
up
you're
off
welcome
mute
to
and ask, you're welcome to do that.
you can wave your hand and come off of mute. You can put it in chat, whatever questions you have. I'm going to make a comment just because the reason why I ended up meeting James indirectly was because of learning about the HUD program in Gainesville. What's interesting, and it's not just Gainesville, it's pretty much everywhere, the rates that they pay for one bedroom are not really very they're not really appropriate, because most places won't accept their rates, but that's not really true of 2, 3, and 4 and 5 bedroom. HUD's prices get significantly better for bigger properties, which is just interesting, something I didn't know until I went down this whole HUD rabbit hole. And because of that, if the veteran has 3 children, the HUD rate will be really good, like market rate, good rent. So, but then there's also not as many HUD 3.2s or 4.2s or 5.2s or 5.3s. There's not that many available. So HUD doesn't pay a great rate at the 1.1, but as the more bedrooms it gets, the better the HUD rate gets. It gets more appropriate to what the cost of rent is right now. Just as a little learning lesson that I learned.
We have another question in the chat. Barbara wants to know, do you work directly with the Department of Housing?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we meet on a regular basis. And we have a,
And that was the other thing, James, that I learned about in Gainesville in particular. They have two groups. They have the city of Gainesville, and then they have the Alachua County, and they're very different. They're run very different. Alachua County is super supportive and wants to get stuff done, and the city of Gainesville just doesn't. So it was just, I don't know how common that is. If every county has a big county-wide, and there are city offices of the HUD within that county, but that's how Gainesville is.
the problem with Gainesville is they're understaffed. So Alachua County has good staffing and they maintain their employees. For some reason, Gainesville Housing Authority loses employees on a regular basis, and they're always understaffed. So for us, we prefer dealing with Alachua. Now, we do refer people to Gainesville Housing Authority, but we do so reluctantly, honestly, because they have a
I didn't
difficult
realize
time.
that HUD was broke up. I didn't know that HUD was broke up like that. That there would be a city. Is it based on the size of the city? Like, are there counties that don't have big cities in them, that it's just a county versus city, or is that different all throughout the state?
Well, it's different throughout the country and the state. So not everybody has two housing authorities. Most locations have one housing authority. There are places that have two. Now, why some have two, I have no idea. I'm not sure why they have a Gainesville and a Alachua County, because they cover pretty much the same area. Alachua County covers all of Gainesville. So most of the vouchers that we get from Alachua County Housing Authority are to live in Gainesville. And you would think we would get them from Gainesville Housing Authority, since it is Gainesville, but because of the different structure of the two different places, Alachua is a lot smoother.
Interesting. Okay. All righty.
So one of the things
Any
I
more
will leave
questions,
you with
guys?
is that any homeless population is going to be a difficult population, because they do have issues. And one of the reasons why a lot of people are homeless is because of their issues. And so the population can be complicated at best. We have a lot of our veterans. I just had one the other day who threatened to shoot one of my social workers in the head. So they can be a difficult population. They do suffer from a lot of different disorders. We try to work with them as much as we can. Generally, as a supervisor, when I have a veteran that crosses a line, I generally go out myself and speak to them and let them know that, hey, that's not acceptable behavior, that you must, you have to be respectful of your social worker. Your social worker is doing the best you can. But that happens more often than I care to admit, that we have a lot of our veterans that do suffer from issues and take it out on their social worker. They don't pay their rent. They want us to pay their rent for them. And we say, we have no ability to do that for you. Things of that nature. So it can be a very difficult population.
So James, I'm not sure you know exactly everybody that's on this call what we actually do, so I'll give you a quick version. So a professional guardian is appointed by the courts to become the person, to walk in their shoes. They are adjudicated and incapacitated, either plenary or limited of person or property, meaning some of their rights are removed or all their rights. Most all of us have been appointed the guardian of a veteran in our career, or more than one, and they're often those folks too. They're often those folks that are in the woods. We can't get them to come out of the woods. We can't find them on any given day. Now, there's also the VA fiduciary, which is a whole separate, federal versus state of Florida. So if in Alachua County a guardian is appointed, Alachua County would be where the letters of guardianship are issued from, and that's a state thing. But of course, if they are a veteran and if there is a VA benefits and there's a VA fiduciary, then we could also be named as their VA fiduciary as well. That's not uncommon. But one of my big interests in this whole program is that we're the people trying to find them housing. They don't want necessarily the housing. They don't necessarily want to follow any requirements of any kind. And so that's who this crowd of people that you're talking with today. There's two groups. There's professional guardians who are independent guardians, and then there are public guardians, and those are not-for-profits where the state of Florida has determined their office to be a public guardian office. Every county has at least one public guardian office, and the purpose of that is to have guardianship for folks that don't have any resources. They might have income, but that income doesn't even begin to cover the $7,000 a month ALF bill. So
Right.
having income it doesn't make them indigent, it just makes that they have income. So professional guardians and public guardians are in the same position. We are appointed by the courts to represent that individual. The proper label is ward, although that's my least favorite word. And that ward is then determined to be incapacitated. And one of the problems with lots of programs is that ward is the equivalent of a minor. They can't contract. They can't sign for anything. I, as the guardian, can, depending on who we're signing to or for. But it gets kind of complicated. So I'm assuming that I think for our clients that we're taking care of that are not within the guardianship realm, the VASH program will work for some of our, because all of us tend to get sucked into helping. Go ahead, Julie.
Teresa, I actually have so people send me questions directly that you can't see in the chat. Teresa Brock wants to know if a veteran has a guardian, just like what you explained, and is accepted into the program, is the program case manager still involved? And I think you answered that, but can you answer that again?
Yes, we do. If they get into our program, case management is part of the program. It's mandatory with the program. So when we talk about a guardian, we're talking about a living guardian caretaker, correct?
No, we're talking about a guardian, the case that
So
Teresa
if
just
they're not
explained, appointed
capable
by
of
the court.
independent living, so if they're not capable of living on their own, then we would not accept them into our program. So one of the primary prerequisites is that they can live independently.
But
so
they
a guardian,
could be independent and have a professional guardian appointed by the courts. That happens.
yeah, that's fine. If they live independently, but they have a guardian for the financial portion, that's fine. As long as they can live independently. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So maybe.
And then we do have another question, which is, do you use secured units in nursing homes and ALFs if the veteran cannot be housed independently with support?
We have a person that does work in that area to try to find them an assisted living facility or a nursing home. Now, right now, we're not using vouchers to do that. There are some locations that are able to use a voucher to help pay for the assisted living facility or the nursing home. Gainesville and Alachua County have not figured out how to do that yet. So what they pay is, so it's based on the amount of space. So for example, if a person is getting a room in an assisted living facility, they'll only pay about $400, which doesn't cover anything in an ALF.
Right.
Now, other locations have figured out how to pay the entire apartment rate for an assisted living facility. And why our housing authorities haven't figured out how to do it yet, I don't know. We've had several meetings to ask them, hey, other people are doing this. Can you figure it out? Because we do have a lot of older veterans that do need higher level of care, but they don't have the financial resources to go into a high level of care.
What about
So you're saying some HUD programs are actually paying ALF rates?
They may not be paying the entire rate, but they'll pay whatever the going rate is for a one-bedroom apartment, for the entire apartment, as opposed to just paying, one room worth of resources.
Okay. What about secured units that accept individuals with mental health issues? Does the Gainesville area have any number of secured units like that accept individuals?
We do not.
Okay.
At all. We don't have anything like that. So generally for our veterans, when they do have mental health crisis, they will go up onto the ward on the Malcolm Randall Medical Center. And once they stabilize them, then they release them and they go back to their apartment. But we don't have a long-term facility for mental health here in Gainesville.
Okay.
And then we're getting a lot of people just saying, thank you very much for the information. They said it's been very informative and very helpful, and everybody's really appreciative that you came on today.
Oh, you're most welcome. And
That was
again, that number to
very
the hotline for homeless can be called, because I know you're from all over the place. I thought this was just Gainesville, but now I realize it's all over. Um, yeah, they can call that 188 number, and they will put them in contact with the local medical center, who will put them in contact with a local representative from the HUD-VASH program.
okay. Awesome. All right, Julie, do you have any more chats? Nope,
Nope,
that's it.
everybody's really just saying,
Okay.
thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. And
Yeah,
you all
it was
have
really good.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, it was really good. I didn't know anything about this, so it's so nice to have an understanding about something that exists out there that can help. Right now I'm sitting here thinking about two vets that live behind the 7-Eleven up here in Longwood where I am, and I see them all the time, and I didn't even know that there was maybe something as a possibility. So I'm gonna go buy them a burrito and a Coke and try to talk them into it, because I didn't even know this was something that was available. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And you have my email, so if you have any questions at all, feel free to email me anytime or call me. I think you have my phone number as well.
Yeah, Julie, can you put that up on the chat in case folks want it?
Yeah, I'll grab it real quick.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm checking through to see if there's any other comments or any hands up. I don't see anybody else. James, you have a connection now to the guardianship world of the state of Florida. So if you ever have a question or something that you need any information about, feel free to reach out, because that's what we do. It's this whole crowd. This is what we deal with every single day.
Awesome.
So
I may reach out to you to find out how the program works.
Yeah, we'll be happy to talk about it. All right, so there's James' email address. James, we've got james.vals, V-A-L-E-S, @va.gov. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and I was looking for his phone,
All right,
and I'm not seeing it in my stuff, but we'll make sure we get it out to everybody when
It
we
should
get
be
all
on
this
my
stuff.
email return address if
Okay.
you have it when I responded to you. That's my cell number, and I think my office number's on there as well.
Yeah, it might have gone straight to Kate. I'm kind of digging through my emails while we're talking. I'm not seeing it, but we'll make sure to get it out to everybody so they have your good contact information.
All righty. Well, everyone have a wonderful
Okay.
evening.
Thank you very much, James.
Thank you, James. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So, folks, if you're still on and you guys want to talk about some of the stuff that's happening with the Benevolent, I think people may have some questions. We can take a few minutes and discuss that if y'all want to. If you do, you can raise your hand, you can put it in chat, or if you've got a question about it, it's all new information that you may have just seen by your email this week. Anybody want to talk about that?
I have no idea what it is, so I can't really ask questions as of yet. So
I'm in that same boat.
Is this Alexander talking?
yeah, it is. Sorry, I can't seem to
Okay.
find my. Okay, here we
All
are.
right,
Yeah, hi.
We'll bring it up. Julie, can you bring up the news flash about the Benevolent Fund? So remember, the Benevolent Fund is one of AGENT's programs, and it helps get guardians, professional guardians, and their attorneys paid for pro bono cases. We've recently had to revamp the limitations in it, because in the past we really had very few limitations, and we had to do that because we were getting hurt by some things that we weren't expecting, we couldn't anticipate. So basically it has a lot to do with who the petitioner was. If you've got hospitals and nursing homes calling you, wanting you to become the guardian, before you agree to those cases, make sure you understand that those cases are not necessarily going to get paid for under the Benevolent. The focus of the Benevolent is community guardianship cases. If the hospital needs you to be the guardian, then the hospital can pay. If the nursing home needs you to be the guardian, then the nursing home can pay. But the concept behind the Benevolent was always community wards or community AIPs, people that needed a guardian, but don't have any resources. We had to limit some dollar amounts per month, because we had some guardians coming in with 15 to 20 cases under Benevolent, and that was going to wipe it out. So we had to limit that. We're now taking the limit is $3,000 up to $3,000 per month for one guardian if they have multiple benevolent cases. There's some other, yeah, thanks, Julie. There's some other limitations. One of them is we don't do ETG cases until you've been appointed permanently. We don't do voluntary guardian of the property cases. We don't do guardian of the property of the minor cases. And then there's some other ones that are case by case that are kind of unusual situations that we are aware of that kind of fall between the cracks. So there is some flexibility. AGED reserves the right to refuse any payment in benevolent, but this is the basic rules. So when you're trying to decide if you're going to accept a case and you presume that you're going to be able to get reimbursed or get paid through benevolent, please read through this. There's all brand new forms. Let's see, Julie, can you pull, are those forms up on the website now? All right, so
Yep, we got them
the
up this
forms
week.
are similar to what, yeah, they're similar to what they've always been, they're just updated. So when you go on the AGED website, you can read through them. This is your instructions, similar to what they've always been, but again, we're just giving the updates that have now been added.
So for these
so
like
if
newsletters
you
that are telling you, oh, sorry.
Well, okay, so it's not exactly, I mean, yes and no. So agent sent out an email. So Alexander, if we have your email address, you should have got the update. Did that go out yesterday, Julie? Or was it the day
I
before?
believe so. It either went out yesterday or the day before. It went out this week.
Right. And it'll say update about benevolent or something like that. Now, agent sends a lot of emails. You get emails about obtaining classes coming up. You get emails about the peer group. You get emails about lots of things. So sometimes I think we send out too many emails, but there's always stuff happening. So this is the program to help you remember. One of the things to remember about is services rendered after date of discharge. So be aware, pay attention to when you're asking for payments for. So here's the current zones. If you've never seen the benevolent before, these are how the money is plopped in together. We used to do it based on county, and then Nick came up with this great idea, which is zones, and this has been much better. It's been much more effective. So you can see zone B, which is up like north corner of Florida. It's got 391,000 in it, and these numbers change all the time because money gets paid out all the time. So and then also how this money gets here to begin with. Let's talk about that. So the way money gets into the benevolent fund is you as a guardian have a need for a pooled trust, and you meet with your attorney and you discuss what pooled trust vendor is the best option. Now I'm going to talk about the elephant walking around the middle of this big room, and that is the Center for Special Needs Trust, which just recently filed an insane bankruptcy of $100 million, which is giving many people a very uncomfortable feeling about a pooled trust. AGED is well aware of this. AGED has written the clarity of why AGED is not going to get into the trouble that the Center for Pooled Trust. Actually, Nick was just on a call with a judge the other day because a guardian wanted to use the pooled trust, and the judge said, well, I want to know why you guys are not going to steal the money like the center did. So pooled trust happens because your ward has need for Medicaid. Maybe they're in a nursing home and they need ICP. Maybe they're in an assisted living facility. Maybe there's the QMB and they either have too much income or too much assets or both. You need to get them qualified for Medicaid. A pooled trust is one of the options that you and your attorney will talk about, because there's other strategies for planning for Medicaid. You and your attorney will talk about. You'll decide that a pooled trust is the best option. You'll petition the court. You will choose a pooled trust provider, and your court may have whatever requirement they require for you to go about that process of choosing. And then if you choose AGED and you fund that ward's pooled trust with AGED, that's where that money sits, and you use it every month for that ward's needs, to pay attorney's fees, to pay guardian's fees, to pay their facility bill, to pay their power bill, to pay their vet bill, anything that's for that ward's needs. Then some period down the road, the ward passes away. When that happens, the first thing that happens is Medicaid sends a letter to the aged and it says, we have a lien.
Opposite,
Agent
we
tells-
send a letter to Medicaid.
You said, sorry, Julie, thank you. Agent sends the letter Medicaid and Medicaid says, yes, we're owed blah, 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 $10,257. If there is less money in that pooled trust for that ward that is owed to the Medicaid, then aged retains that money for its nonprofit mission. And in this case, that would be to put that money into the zone it came from. So if the guardianship was established in Jacksonville or Miami or Key West or Tallahassee, whatever zone it came from, that money dumps into the zone and it sits there to be used by you, all the professional guardians, so that they can accept community guardianship cases. That's how the money got to the Benevolent Fund to begin with. So that was kind of a speed version of that. There's more detail to it. You guys have any questions?
Well,
Oh,
Kelly,
Kelly's raising her hand.
Sorry.
yep, go on, sorry.
Sorry. Kelly, you want to talk or was that from before? Pittman. What happened? I don't know.
I think she just put her hand down. I think it was
All right.
before.
I have a question really
Okay,
quick if I
so-
can.
Yeah. Alex, go ahead.
So for the trust or the pooled trust that you're talking about, it never would go back to like a public guardianship program.
So I'll answer that, Terry.
No.
So Aged is the administrative
Okay.
trustee for the Florida Public Guardianship Trust. If you are a public guardian, you should use the documents for that trust. It doesn't feed into the Benevolent Fund. However, the retained funds from that trust go to the Foundation for Indigent Guardianship to support public guardianship in the state.
Big. Okay.
So those are separate documents. I
Good
can pull them
question.
up on my page just so you can see them. So hold on one second, I'll pull them up. Here, let me share the screen. But yeah, if you
Good
are a
question, Alex.
public
Alex, where-
guardian, you guys should really be using, under our forms, it's the Florida Public Guardianship Pooled Trust right here. That feeds the Foundation for Indigent Guardianship. So the retained funds go to the Foundation for Indigent Guardianship. We're the administrative trustee, and then the Foundation for Indigent Guardianship pays it to the state to get out to the public guardians. So,
Okay.
Yeah, good. Glad you brought that up.
but that
Diana,
doesn't
you
go
had a
into
question?
the Benevolent Fund, just so you know, that's separate. That funds all the public guardianship stuff.
Okay.
Separate buckets. Yep.
So
Diana?
what would be the deciding factor there of which one to use?
If you're a professional guardian and not a public guardian, you should use the Aged regular pooled trust forms. If you are a public guardian and you have clients that need to, you should probably use the FIG public guardian trust. It's probably usually the easy difference.
Okay,
Go
thank
ahead,
you.
Diana.
This is going to be probably a no answer, but I need to clarify it so that I have my information straight. I have a client that suddenly the nursing home has decided that they really don't want him there. And he is Medicaid only. He was, I'll put it bluntly, he was a client that I picked up from the Arts Foundation. I have never billed. I just finally did the first annual report, waiting to get the last statement for the accounting. He gets $30 a month in the from the nursing home for SSI only. Because they want him moved, and because of his behavior, and because of his sliding scale insulin, all kinds of things going on, their corporate social worker apparently decided that he should go to Ormond Beach from
Oh,
Altamont, Apopka area.
oh,
I haven't billed. I don't even know if I'm going to bill at this point. But just so I know, is it possible that if I can even find a Volusia County guardian to take this case, they have any ability to utilize the benefit of the Benevolent Fund?
and that is case by case. And that exact example is why we are not saying absolutely no to hospital and SNF cases. It has mostly to do with that very situation, Diana. Mostly it has to do with successor situations. So you took the case from the hospital or the SNF. That was your decision. You made that decision knowing full well the circumstance.
Mhm.
The successor guardian is not taking that as a hospital petitioning or a SNF petitioning, even though that was how the case originated.
Correct.
When we had our meeting where, right, when all, exactly, well, you guys did such a good job when we had that meeting of talking about some of these unique situations and nuances and what if, that we wanted to give a little more flexibility. So the answer is possibly, but it is case by case. We're not making it a black and white rule for that very reason, because in a way, the successor guardian is essentially taking a community case, kind of, sort of. So that's exactly why Diana, that's exactly why we came to that decision.
And
Okay.
also Kelly's hand is back up. So Kelly, do you want to say what
All
you
right,
got?
Kelly,
So-
come on.
All right, now I can
Come
figure out my
on,
computer.
Kelly.
So my question goes along with Diane, sort of. So, you know, some of us guardians were stupid enough to take on a guardian's cases that is no longer a guardian. And it was several years ago. And those were the hospital, the petitioner. And you guys have paid me on some of them. So what happens with those?
Yep.
And it's from
So-
2019.
Right. So, because number one, we're changing the benevolent rules, and that's always difficult because, you know, whenever you change the rules, it's always difficult because people are like, wait a minute, we used to be able to do this before, and we are completely aware of that. So, when you have a case that you accepted, the petitioner was the hospital or the SNF, but it was a long time ago. Send it in to the benevolent fund and it will be considered. But the goal here is to stop the bleed. So what you guys may understand is that the benevolent got hit an insane amount of money removed from it in about a 12-month window for hospital and SNF cases, where there's one guardian who had 20 or 25 cases that she submitted in one period, that she took that many hospital cases. Here's what you have to understand. Those cases will almost never put money into the benevolent. So it's a one-way faucet going out empty. It'll empty benevolent. And that means when Martha and Bambi and Betty and Esther agree to take another community case out of the kindness of their heart, they won't get paid anything ever, because the benevolent will be wiped slick. So we had to do something. Honestly, didn't really want to do this, didn't want to create limitations, because you guys are still doing the work. You're still having an attorney represent you for free or for nearly nothing. We didn't want to have limitations, but we had to stop the bleed. So when you get contacted by a hospital or a nursing home that wants you to become the guardian, or you get contacted by an attorney who represents the hospital or the nursing home, remember, we have a CHG program and it is made for those clients. And the design behind CHG is you get contacted by a hospital, they want you to take the case as the guardian, and they want to pay you a whopping, I don't know, $700 or $1,100 for the life of the guardianship for you and your attorney. I'm not telling you don't do that, but be aware of the consequences of doing that. My suggestion is reach out to me. I'm the liaison for the CHG. Let me know who at the hospital or who at the attorney's office or who at the nursing home is asking you to become the guardian. And then I will reach out to them and get them, hopefully, to write a check to the CHG program for that individual soon-to-be ward. Now, there'll be money permanently for the lifetime of that person so that you can become the guardian and get paid. And then if you retire or pass away, a successor guardian can get paid and their counsel. That was the whole reason why we designed CHG. And to be very frank and very candid, I have had dozens of these cases where I'm negotiating with the hospital or I'm negotiating with a SNF and they're just about to write a check for CHG and they call another brand new guardian and the brand new guardian says yes for free. They don't need to use CHG then, so they don't. So it's very frustrating because you guys are doing all the work, you're not getting paid, you're not able to pay your attorneys, and there's a solution to this problem right here at hand. So this week alone, I got contacted by both Attorney Williams and Laura Sterling's office with a long list of cases. Many of you probably got an email about this. Long list of hospital cases, long list of SNF cases. They want you to work for some limited number. The funniest email that I had from, I won't identify who, but one of those folks said that the guardian was welcome to pitch a rate that they want to ask the nursing home to pay one time. Really? That was the wording on the email. Like, you should be pitching getting paid, because you shouldn't need to get paid, silly. So anyway, so the Benevolent Fund is reducing how it pays and when it pays. And that's because we have to keep it a functional program. It has to have money coming in to all the different zones, so that when you get called by, you know, the Adult Protective Service about a guy in the community, about a veteran, about a community person, that you're willing to accept the case, because you know you'll get paid a little bit. You and your attorney, you won't get paid full freight, but you'll get paid a little bit from the Benevolent, which is its whole purpose.
Looks like Bambi has her
So
hand
read the,
too.
who does?
Bambi.
Hey, Bambi. Go.
Bambi, do you want to come off mute and ask your question since your hand is raised? Bambi Williams. You could also put it in chat if you can't come off mute for any reason.
Yeah. Okay, it is 4:25. We try to shut this down by 4:30. So any quick questions? 2-minute question, 1-minute question? No? All right, Bambi, you're about to run out of time. Come off of mute, baby, and ask your question.
I think she lowered her hand, and yeah, she lowered her hand.
Poof. Okay, all right. Thank you, guys. I'm
Hey,
glad you were
folks.
here. As usual.
Oh, she unmuted.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Bambi. Hey,
I'm sorry. What
Hey,
time?
go
How long do I have? When do you try to shut this
fast. Talk
down?
fast. No,
Listen,
it's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just need 30 seconds to vent. Okay.
Okay, we like venting.
This is it. I get an email from a guardian in another county. I get a phone call. You're the new successor guardian. I call her back. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you are. You're appointed. I don't know what you're talking about. I finally, sit and speak with her. I believe Aged is the trust holder. She goes on and on and on, only to find out she's now resigning because there's no money left in the trust.
So
I'm
wait a
gonna say
minute.
this.
So were you already appointed? Did you get appointed?
Well, I was quote appointed off the wheel. However, I've signed absolutely nothing, and I've emailed the JA, and I said honestly and respectfully, I've just moved my office after 9 years of being in one location. I have an ETG that the day that I got assigned ETG, the caregiver absconded with her, has taken her through 3 states, gone through money. I'm on that. I have another guardianship that, yeah, NCIS is involved, homicide is involved. The only person involved is Moses. Moses is the only one, and all his flockers, the only one not involved in this. New attorney I'm working with who seems no hurry, kind of, yeah, let's see what we can do. And I said, and I have another guardianship coming up next week. I can't take this case. Then I get an email copying Aged and myself from this other professional guardian. This is the new successor guardian and blah, blah. And I emailed everybody back and said, I am not the successor guardian. I have not signed an oath. I knew nothing about this. I'm not going to be the successor guardian for the reasons that I told you. And please stop disseminating my name out in public as a successor guardian. Being appointed off the wheel without my knowledge or consent does not make me the successor guardian. So I would like to say this as nicely as I can. Ditching somebody when they're out of money will not give you a very good reputation. Not that I think anybody here would do that, but I'm just saying that is not a nice thing to do.
So,
yes, ma'am.
So Bambi, let's talk about that a little. I've
Yes.
heard many public guardians on this forum say that they will accept successor guardianship from professional guardians that cases run out of money. But on the other side of that coin, I've also heard the public guardian saying, nope, your problem, don't call us. We got a 5-year waiting list. Second is, remember, You get appointed, letters of guardianship, order appointing, app, and oath. 4 documents. 4 documents. In our soon to be released, Kate and I are working on it, library of forms and checklists and documents, we have the declination to serve, and we've shared it among this group many times. You'll hear a guardian say, well, I was made to take it. Well, I had to take it. Well, I was forced to take it. Well, I was told I must take it. All those statements are potentially true, and there is political fallout when you don't, potentially. But there's also this weird shit that happened some years ago. It was kind of connected with like the Civil War and slavery and all that stuff. You yourself are agreeing if you sign the app and you sign the oath. If you decide it's not a case you want to take, and you don't do an app and you don't do an oath and you fill out the declination to serve, you can't be forced to serve. Could you get grief from the clerk, from the monitor, from the judge, from the attorney? Sure, you can. Absolutely, you can. And this is something you'll hear people often say on here. Well, I was made to. So what? They duct taped you and held a pen in your hand and forced you to sign the app and oath? I don't think so. Now, I'm not saying that it will be difficult when you refuse these, but that's the reality.
What I did say, because the cases from Palm Beach County, is also I'm in Broward, but more importantly in the email to the JA was, I respectfully will take the next case. This is just not the time and the right now where I can take this case. It's just give me the next one. I can't serve this ward properly if I have
so, you know, that's the whole
going on. And she's in Palm Beach County and I'm in Broward. So
right.
I don't know what
So Bambi, I have your email. I'll forward you a copy of the form Teresa's talking about, just so you have a copy for your stuff too. The declination to serve form.
You know, it's tough because many guardians say, I don't want to be on the wheel because of this, okay? Because they say, I'm never going to get a paying case from the wheel. And I will tell you, if you guys had any understanding how different guardianship is from one county to the next, from one circuit to the next, on this call right here, we've got guardians from Broward, Jacksonville. Martha, where are you? Martha, you're in Ocala. Where are you?
Ormond Beach.
Ormond. We got, just on this last group of people that are here with us right now, this is a nice little synopsis of the whole state of Florida. It is not the same in one county to the next, one circuit to the next. There are counties and circuits that don't use the wheel at all ever. There are counties and circuits that only use the wheel. So you have to be on the wheel to take cases from the courts. The question is, how often do the cases come from the courts, and how often do cases that come from the courts are those paying cases? That's something that skill and experience and time will teach you. Okay. So when you're new to this, reach out and talk to some of the other guardians, because there might have been a reason why nobody
wanted the case.
All the professional guardians that were contacted to become that guardian won't. Go ahead.
And the caveat is the guardian that was assigned before me is on the West Coast, and that was your excuse. But 2 things, and then I promise I'm done. One, in order to be a guardian and have wards in Palm Beach, you must be on the wheel. That's not an option. You must.
Is that, Bambi, is that an administrative order?
Yes, yes. And that just came down.
Would you share that order when you get a minute?
Absolutely. And I will. Yes, and I will share the one that just came down from Broward County. It just came down, the date of this. I will forward it to you because it was forwarded to us, and they copied verbatim. They probably did a cut and paste for the Broward County. They took the exact same form that Palm Beach uses, and they implemented that, as we said, as an executive order. So now they're implementing that in Broward, which it's not that it's just when you can't, but having another guardian, start giving your information out as the contact person not a nice thing to do. And this actually should be a case for the Palm Beach public guardian, but I'm not going to fight that battle. I have enough battles to fight. So Palm Beach, you must be on the wheel if you have a case there. Broward, not a must. Just they're requesting that we do that.
So as a last thing, we've been trying to get a project going for years of every single administrative order in any probate division, because they're so friggin' different that it's bananas. And we've talked about this a couple times. So if anyone has a big interest in how these administrative orders work, because they're very local to that circuit, that county, and they're not, the county across the way pays no attention to them. But as a guardian, learning how and where to look for administrative orders and where they are, and because someone will say to you in a probate court, maybe it's a clerk or maybe it's a court monitor, well, we have an admin order about that. Okay, give me a copy. Well, I don't know where it is. Okay. So someday, one of the peer projects, I have a list of like 20 things for us to work on in the next 10 years. That's one of them. I would like to have a way. The bar supposedly has worked on this multiple times and hasn't ever accomplished it. I don't understand that. So I'd love for us to, as a group, to decide, okay, I'll go down to my court and I'll go get all the administrative orders that relate to probate and guardianship in my circuit. Love to have that across the board. Now they're moving targets, they can change, but at least it would let you know how, because like, let's say you're considering taking a case in a county that's adjacent to where you live, but you don't want to because you've been told there's an administrative order that addresses this, that, or the other. I'd love for us to share those with each other. They're not easy to find on many probate websites. You can't even find them. They're buried. So if anybody's got any thoughts about that as a project that this peer group could produce, it'd be helpful and very educational.
I just forwarded to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Bambi. I appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, it is 4:30. Oh, 4:30 the dot. Hoo-hoo.
Thank you, everyone.
Guys, everybody, for being here. And this was great. We learned stuff as usual and more to come.
Thank you so much.
Everybody read the Benevolent stuff in great detail. Call and ask questions. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.